Well, the transfer window slams shut on Friday night at 11 o'clock. It's shaping up to be probably one of the livelier ones than we've seen in recent years. But guys, obviously, we've all been in the game a few years, probably got some stories about deadline days past. Who wants to tell a particularly interesting one?
I can go first. The messiest one that I can remember was United 2013, Fabio Coentrão, the famous Fellaini transfer window at United. They tried to sign Coentrão on loan from Real Madrid late on deadline day. Everything was signed, paperwork signed by Real Madrid, by Man United. Player got sent to the Premier League, which gave them an extra hour to actually do the deal. And then Real Madrid just stopped answering the phone. They just stopped responding to anything. They were trying to sign a left back who had chosen to go somewhere else. They thought we were getting a left back and ended up going somewhere else, so they wanted to keep Coentrão. It was so messy that there was just nothing. There was deadline day, deadline came and went, passed. There was just nothing from United, nothing from Real Madrid. The Premier League went quiet as well. Even in the morning, it was so messy that the Premier League couldn't confirm one way or the other whether the deal had gone through. And it was only late the day after, like mid-afternoon, that they finally came back and said it's just not gone through. And United was still convinced that it had, and it just hadn't. The paperwork, the final bit of paperwork that they needed, just had never arrived. And Coentrão to stay in Madrid and never got to play for Man United, which just summed up that window for United and the Woodward era, really.
That kind of summed up the next 5 years, didn't it, really?
It did.
That was how it was. I mean, my memory is, it's probably the most famous deadline day. It was September 2008, and it started with Man City having just signed Pablo Zabaleta, and there was suggestions that Man City could be in trouble with their ownership because Thaksin Shinawatra was at the club and he had his assets frozen. He was the Thai Prime Minister, and it looked like City could be in a real mess. Then all of a sudden, about 9 o'clock in the morning, there was news that this mysterious consortium from Abu Dhabi was going to buy the club. And next thing you know, Chelsea's moved for Robinho. At the time, Chelsea were either the champions or they were certainly, obviously, a major player at the time under Abramovich. I think big club, big spending club. We're going to sign Robinho from Real Madrid. And then we heard that Man City were interested in Robinho. I was like, this sounds ridiculous. And at the same time, Man United were trying to get a deal done for Dimitar Berbatov at Tottenham. The Berbatov deal had gone on for weeks and weeks, and this is partly why Daniel Levy's got such a big reputation amongst Man United, at least, of being a hard bargain driver, because he just wouldn't agree to a deal for Berbatov. Daniel Levy then heard that Man City were interested in Berbatov, so the price went up. So for the next 2 or 3 hours, all this craziness is going on about Man City, and Dimitar Berbatov has still not left London. Then all of a sudden his plane takes off from London, and somebody at Man United told me was, when it took off, they didn't know if he was flying to sign for Man United or Man City, because they'd realised that this Man City takeover was serious.
Just Manchester, please.
He was going to Manchester, and they were fairly confident, but because they didn't trust Daniel Levy to be straight with them in terms of, they felt that Daniel Levy was aware of this money at Man City. He thought, right, this is my chance to get a massive deal for Berbatov, whether it's to Man City or to get more at Man United. So this is going on all day, and I think by about 6-7 o'clock at night, United realised that, thankfully for them, Berbatov is going to United, but he's costing about £4 million more than they'd agreed to, because City bumped up the price to the point where David Gill and Felix Ferguson had basically had an agreement that they would never do a deal with Tottenham again on the back of that, because they felt that Daniel Levy had taken it so far to the line and ripped them off in many aspects. But while Berbatov signed for United, it was going dark. I remember the pictures of David Gill's office with the lights on at dark Old Trafford. Robinho was flying to the UK. Again, he felt, since been told in the years since, he thought he was going to Manchester, but he didn't know if he was going to Man United or Man City, because he hadn't heard of Man City at the time. And this sounds ridiculous, but Man City back in 2008, if you can put it in some context for fans now, imagine waking up on deadline day on Friday to hear that Liverpool are going to sign Kylian Mbappe, but Everton suddenly come in for him and Everton sign him. That was what it was like with Robinho signing for City ahead of Chelsea, because Man City were a club that had 35 years of nothingness, of being a bit of a joke, and now all of a sudden they were competing with Man United with Dimitar Berbatov. They were competing with Chelsea for Robinho and getting Robinho, and obviously that turned out not to be that successful of a move, but it was the British record signing at the time. Flipping back to Man United, because Daniel Levy had so much fun with United and City by playing them off against each other, he realised at 10 o'clock that he didn't have a striker. that he hadn't managed to factor in that if we're going to get rid of Dimitar Berbatov, we need to bring somebody in. So Fraser Campbell, who was a Man United youth team player at the time, played a couple of games for the first team, was driving to Hull to sign for Hull. When he suddenly gets a phone call from Man United, turn around, you're going to Tottenham, because that was the way out of it. That Daniel Levy realised that he needed to sign a player, and he signed Fraser Campbell. You might remember Fraser Campbell's time at Tottenham. Not many people would.
I think my deal would have to be Andrey Arshavin, Zenit St Petersburg to Arsenal, February 2009. Ran the whole window, but really kind of peaked right at the end. The clubs had been apart in their valuations. Zenit had wanted 15 million for the whole window. They'd not budged at any point. Arsenal had started at about half that, got to 10, got to 12, got to 13.8 million on January the 31st. The deadline was February the 1st. Now, the weather forecast for February the 1st was snowstorms like you've never seen in London. And the agent involved took a view that, well, we don't want the weather to scupper this deal, so let's get him on a plane, let's get him to London, let's get him here. And they did it all in secret. They kind of got him over here. They had a hotel, it was in Elstree, and they said to him, look, you're over here, you're not really supposed to be over here, but we didn't want the weather to ruin it. Just keep a low profile, just stay in the hotel overnight, don't worry about it. Next day, they get the papers in the morning. Andrey Arshavin's on the back page of every newspaper, pictured in a bobble hat, texting on his mobile phone outside the hotel. All hell breaks loose. Zenit are saying, well, why is he over there? You've not got permission to have our player in your country. Arsenal don't really know where to take the deal from here. They catch a break, or all sides think they catch a break, when, because of the weather, the snow arrives. It's pandemonium trying to get across England, let alone trying to get flights in and out of the country. The Premier League decides to extend the deadline for another 24 hours, so February the 2nd is now the deadline. So on the morning of February the 2nd, the relations haven't thawed between the two clubs. Zenit are still annoyed. Arsenal are still saying, well, look, we don't really think we need to pay any more than 13.8 because the player's here, we kind of know we've turned his head. Eventually you're going to relent. It gets to 40 minutes before the deadline, and the agent involved says, okay, I can't handle this anymore, I'm going to put the 1.2 up. And he phones Zenit and he says, we're at 15, here's the 1.2. Zenit say, okay, we finally got there. The agent rings Ivan Gazidis, who's the chief executive of Arsenal, and says, I've offered them the 1.2 million. And there's a long pause on the phone, and Ivan says, okay. And the agent thinks, what does that mean? Does that mean, okay, we're paying it? Okay, I'm paying it? You know, he thinks he can get that money back in the commission that he'll make, but he's not sure. The email exchanges continue, and suddenly Arsenal are saying, okay, we're going to pay 50 million. So he thinks, phew, okay, I'm not now paying the 1.2. We've got there, we've got over the line. But the story doesn't end there, because this was an era when the fax machine was still in play, and the Premier League wanted official hard copies. The fax machine there. The Premier League wanted official hard copies of the documents that said these two clubs have agreed to transfer this player. Except the Russians' fax machine was broken. So we're now into the final 5 minutes of the window, and a phone call is going from the agent to Zenit to say, right, just send an email to Ivan Gazidis that says, we agree to accept this amount for this player, and Ivan will reply and it will say agreed. Just put one word, agreed, and then we've got on official documentation or some sort of paper trail we can show that this agreement has been made before the deadline. And he's frantically refreshing his inbox, and 4 seconds before the deadline closes, this email arrives that says agreed. And that was the only reason that deal got done. And they were able to argue with the Premier League, okay, we don't have the official documentation, but look, we can show this deal was completed before the deadline. And that ended up being one of the key transfers that brought in the sort of official deal sheet that is still used today, where both clubs have to submit the information to a sort of centralised party, and it's all kind of uploaded and done like that. The last sort of thing about this, I think, to say is that after Arshavin had been left the hotel because it had been mobbed by Arsenal fans, he was staying at the house of the agent, and the agent's son was playing FIFA with him. And Arshavin loaded up the game and he started as Arsenal. He said, oh, this is my debut at the Emirates. The agent sort of said, I remember thinking that could have been as close as he ever got.
I mean, one thing that fans probably won't grasp is how much it changes on it. I mean, during the window, but during a deadline day. Because what could be right at 10 o'clock in the morning could be wrong at 11 o'clock, because things agents will put things out to try and move deals onto a different direction. They'll try and, sometimes misinformation is a killer on deadline day, because we're the kind of the messengers, but we're kind of carrying a message for people that have got different agendas, and it's very difficult. And I know that there's one story about when Tom Cleverley left Man United. I think it was 2014, and the club were getting mixed. Everton and Manchester United thought they were going to do a deal for Tom Cleverley, and Cleverley's agent was involved. So Cleverley, at the time, thought he was signing for Aston Villa. So he's driving down the M6, and Everton are speaking to Man United about getting a deal done for Cleverley. And Cleverley is then told, actually, you're going to Everton. So he turns back up the M6 to go to Everton. And then Everton chairman, I think it was Bill Kenwright at the time, rang Man United to say, look, we don't know anything about this because we haven't got the money to do the deal. So United felt that people in the Cleverley camp were playing towards a deal that they didn't want to do, and he had to then not reverse, obviously, figuratively speaking, another U-turn on the M6 back down to Aston Villa, with Roy Keane having been told that he's signing for Everton. So Cleverley, I think he tells his story himself, that Tom Cleverley had started the day a Man United player, thought he was going to Everton, then decided to go to Aston Villa, headed back to Everton, realised the Everton deal wasn't happening, then went to Aston Villa having told Roy Keane that, sorry Roy, I'm not signing for you, I'm signing for Everton. And then 2 weeks later, after the international break, first day of training is Aston Villa. Is there Roy Keane, who's assistant manager at Paul Lambert, having thought that he was going to sign for somebody else. So that was quite an awkward situation for Tom Cleverley. But I think the transfer window is about 21 years old now. I think it came in 2002-03. And at the time, I used to do a lot of Bolton press conferences and covering Bolton. And Sam Allardyce, the manager at the time, he loved the transfer window. And I think Sam, he was quite ahead of the game in lots of ways off the pitch as well. I think he obviously looks back at now and people think he's kind of old school, but at the time he was very kind of cutting edge. And he kind of set the benchmark for how deals were done. Not in a good way in the sense, because on the final day of the January window in 2003, Bolton brought in 2 players, Florent Leville and Pierre-Yves André from France. And Sam admitted he hadn't seen either of them play. He was just basically given the recommendation by scouts and agents, and it was like 3 or 4 hours to go in the window. Bolton put them both on a private jet. They flew to Bolton, signed for the club, and he hadn't seen them play. But his idea was that, look, we do it differently at Bolton. We've got connections all over the place, and I'm prepared to sign players who I've not seen. I think that happens a lot now. I think it happens a lot in the say-so of agents, that this guy will do a job for you, and clubs sign them, and they just look at a piece of paper, check his data, and think, oh, hope that one works. But Big Sam at the time was prepared to sign players without seeing them.
It's like the Bebe one, isn't it? The famous one with Man United. They plucked this guy out of nowhere that no one had ever heard of. And a few of the reporters, after he signed for 10.5 million, he got picked for a reserve team game at Altrincham. And there's about 2 reporters there watching this reserve team game. And people started to sort of smell a little bit of a rat when we saw him before the game. None of the players were on the pitch before the game. The coach was literally moving him into the positions on the pitch that he wanted him to stand during the game. And everyone was thinking, something's not right here. He played dreadfully, obviously, in this reserve team game. Everyone started to think this might be a massive mistake. 2 of us waiting in the corridor after this reserve team game at Altrincham, waiting to possibly speak to Bebe, not knowing that he didn't really speak very much English. He came over to speak. Someone said, what do you think about signing for Man United? And he said, leant into the dictaphones and went, I will be brilliant, and then walked off. And obviously never was.
Well, I think in the first press conference, Sir Alex Ferguson was asked about him, and he admitted he hadn't seen him play. I think he might have put that one on Carlos Queiroz in terms of being recommended him by somebody to see him on YouTube, and don't sign a player on YouTube.
Well, there are instances where that the sort of internal miscommunication between maybe the chief execs or the recruitment arm of the club and the manager can lead to a breakdown. I remember in 2012, Anton Ferdinand, he was going to leave West Ham to join QPR, and Harry Redknapp had been driving that deal, but the clubs had just not got anywhere near a deal. It had got to deadline day. QPR knew they needed a centre-back. So they rang the agent of Sebastian Bassong at Spurs and said, look, we've heard he's surplus to requirements. Could we do a deal? Is he interested? And they moved that deal along really quickly. And it was the afternoon deadline day. He trained that morning with his Spurs teammates, knew this deal was happening, got the message at the end of training, said goodbye to everyone. Thanks very much for everything, to all the staff, and all the best. See you later. I'm moving clubs. Here I go. And then, of course, Harry Redknapp gets wind that the club have organised this deal with Spurs for Bassong and says, I don't want him. So Bassong suddenly sat at home waiting, twitching by the phone. This is deadline day. The time's clicking down. He's not sure what's happening, where his future lies. Harry Redknapp rings up Anton Ferdinand and says, look, come on, I really want to get you to QPR, let's find a way to do this deal. They do the deal, and Bassong's completely, that deal is off, and he has to go back into Tottenham the next day and go, hi everyone, yeah, sorry, I'm still here. And and he spends the next 4 months trying to rebuild his career at a place where he thought he'd gone and his head had, his head had been turned. And it does kind of raise that issue about, we sort of, we're talking lightly here about these kind of stories, but they, these players are traded as commodities, but there is a human impact sometimes for these guys, and when they're left in limbo like this, and you are talking on a fundamental basis about someone changing their employer at the last minute, probably not of their own volition, and everything that comes with that, whether that's a house relocation or a financial change, it's it has a big impact on players' lives and literally can change from one day to the next.
There was an instance, I'm going to protect names for the dignity of the people involved, but an instance at a lower league club in England years ago where a manager had basically said to the squad, look, transfer window's open, but don't worry, we've done all our deals, this is the squad that I want to work with. And you have to remember, at that lower league level, this is people's, not just their livelihoods at stake, but it's, do you have to relocate an entire family? Do the kids need new schools? Have I got money to relocate to wherever I need to go? So a manager to say that to a squad is quite a big thing, because you can kind of relax. I've got a year at this club, it's time to settle, and so it is a big thing. So the players are sat in the dressing room thinking, okay, that's great. Manager walks out of the dressing room back to his office, which is across the car park. Lads are walking out across the car park to the training pitches to start training. Lad at the front picks up a piece of paper that's dropped out of the manager's pocket on the way to his office, opens it up, and in block capitals at the top of the paper it says transfer list, and half the squad are on it, and they're all crowding around looking, going, asking, am I on it, and half of them are on it. And while that was relatively funny at the time, the human aspect of that isn't funny, because there were players on there thinking, I've just bought a house near this club, I thought I was going to be here for a year, but now I'm on this list, and maybe I'm going to have to move to the south coast or up north. It's a huge deal, and it does get lost a little bit, the impact on players.
And a lot as well that people don't kind of factor in is how much sometimes transfers are driven by agents, because agents make so much money off the back of transfers. Now, I was told recently about a championship club that was looking at a player from a Premier League, not academy, but a player that was kind of in between the academy and the first team, so no real experience, and this championship club was quoted £250,000 by the agent to do the deal for a player that no Premier League experience, no real experience. And a club in the championship to have to pay that on top of a fee or the wages, it kind of gives you an example. If that is what agents are banking from a very, very low level transfer, what are they making from players in the Premier League or in La Liga? So sometimes players that might not want to move might be moved because their agents listen.
I know of an agent who a Premier League club from a few years ago was selling abroad, and actually it was a loan deal abroad to a club in Italy, and everything had been agreed, and this agent that had done a lot of business with that Premier League club in the past but was not involved in that deal at all, rang up the Premier League club and say, if you don't give me €50,000 for this deal, you're not going to get any of my players in future, and what's more, I might pull one or two of them,
absolutely, the
one that they're in, out of the club. And the club said, well, hang on a minute, you're holding us to ransom here, you've had absolutely nothing to do with this deal at any stage, and you want paying for it, and they ended up paying the money.
Well, agents' fees are published now, but they're not broken down individually in terms of like this happened for that player, which I think it would be an interesting exercise at times, because the money that goes out of the game for agents like that, and also clubs, like you say, they do feel like they're being blackmailed into a sense of, you have to use us to sign this player, otherwise you won't get this player or the better player further down the line. And I think it's a sad element of the game, but there is a lot of money that goes out of the game on players that you wouldn't even think about.
I would say is that I know that lots of people might be listening to this and think, agents are the devil, they shouldn't be involved in football at all, but there are other instances where they do really protect and look after players. So I'm sure we've all got stories of players who just do not know the best thing for themselves, as much as you'd like to think that a grown man can make a decision himself. Lots of these players don't have those expertise, and there are lots of instances where agents have really protected players and made sure that they are making the right move, or any money they're making is invested in the right way. So it does go both ways. And
the deregulation of the industry in 2016 was a big move, because what happened there was, you suddenly went from about 400, 500 licensed agents in the UK to about 2,000, and most of those were chancers, and a lot of them were family members in a lot of cases who think that they know the best for their boy or girl, and they think we can negotiate the best deal because we have the best interests of our family member at heart. But then they go into a boardroom and they're asked to look at a contract, and they've got no legal expertise whatsoever, or no ability to negotiate, or no awareness of the market value of the asset, to be cynical about it, that they are representing. And that just leads to a situation where if you've not got an experienced agent, you can be exploited. One other element I think we should mention is the competition among agents, which has become, I think, very, very fierce, particularly the big agencies. I'm not going to name the player, but there is a player who demanded £1 million fee up front to sign with an agency, because that agency was expected to facilitate a big money move. And he said, well, look, if you don't give us £1 million up front, we're going to go and sign with someone else who will go and do this deal. And that agency's paid that money. That's a huge outlay to pay, £1 million up front for a deal that you expect to happen, and there's no guarantee that you're going to make the money on the back end. But they felt it was a justified expenditure to have that player on their books.
It's a scary prospect, and obviously Friday brings the deadline. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more instances of deals that happen which people raise an eyebrow about, and I suppose in the years to come we'll find out what really happened.